Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurun militam yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhayascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Matsamo nasti papatma naparadhi cha kaschana parihare pilajjame kim bhruve purushottama bhumau skalita padanam bhumireva avalambanam tvai jata paradhana tvameva sharanam prabho govinda vallabhe radhe prarthayet mamaham sada tvadiyam iti janathu Govindo mam tvaya saha Radha Radhita Radhesha Radhika Prana Vallabha Radha Ramana Vandetvam Radhika Prema Nirchita. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. I see Mahabhav joined, Monisha, Naveen, Ankita Mataji, Rambhav Prabhu,
Hare Krishna.
Madhav Prem, Mukta Mataji. Thank you so much for joining. So we are continuing with our reading of Nectar of Devotion. We have had taken our time to go through in depth because the first few chapters are foundational and they carry a very deep implication in our own spiritual lives as to how we can practically apply these teachings. At sometimes these seems very esoteric, unattainable, and impractical propositions or concepts that are being discussed in Nectar of Devotion. And often we feel that, can you even achieve it? Can you even come close to that? So, this particular few chapters actually give the foundation, and therefore we are spending a lot of time trying to understand. We will pick up speed as we go, because when you have the foundational concepts, it becomes much more easier to understand. For example, when you have the 64 rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, you will be like, why are there so many rules? And are there any higher or lower rules? So all those questions will come to mind. So we will start off with a brief recap of what we have learned so far. In the first in the first few, in the introduction, in the preface and introduction, we read about the symptoms or the qualifications of pure devotional service, anyabhilashita shunyam. We read those particular verses, and we discussed at length of what the pure devotional service to Krishna is, what are the primary characteristics, what are the secondary characteristics, and then the next chapter we read about the 6 qualities of pure devotional service, which is Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Laguta Krita, Sudurlabha, Chandrananda Visheshatma, and Sri Krishna Akarchani. Did I get all 6 of them? Yeah. So now in the next few chapters, we will spend some time on the further concepts, and then we pick up steam as we go along, and then we can discuss more at length. But before we go ahead, do we have any questions or any comments or concerns that we need to discuss about? Or any doubts or concerns from the previous chapter?
Prabhu, you had made a chart with all the qualities and the sub-qualities, right? I didn't see that shared. Maybe hopefully you can share it.
Yeah, yes, Naveen, I'll share it. And it is a little bit of a scribble, so please.
That's okay.
Yeah, so this particular class, we will actually spend some time trying to okay. So this class will be spending two overview points I want to give before we get into it. So Srila Rupa Goswami divides bhakti into 3 varieties of bhakti, which is sadhana bhakti, and there is bhava bhakti, and there is prema bhakti. And sadhana bhakti is divided into 2 subportions. One is called Vaidhi and one is called Raganuga. So this is the division that we will be spending some time. And if you want a breakdown of the chapters, sadhana bhakti is up till 16th chapter. So we'll spend in our Bhakti Shastri course, a lot of time is spent on sadhana bhakti, both Vaidhi and Raganuga. And then chapters 17 and 18 are bhava, and then chapters 19 is prema bhakti. So this is the breakdown in the Nectar of Devotion about the different aspects of it. And this ends the eastern part, and from the southern part, then more details are discussed about the dynamics of prema. When you achieve prema, as I mentioned in one of the earlier classes, what is love of Godhead? We hear so much about it, but really, is it just some sort of nice feeling that you get in the heart? Are there any symptoms? Are there any characteristics? And if you have, when you talk of love, anybody will agree love means emotions, correct? I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is Deepika Mataji mother of Ryan? So if Deepika Mataji goes to Ryan and with a very, very cold, very, very like no emotional voice, say, Ryan, I love you. And poor Ryan won't feel that love because it's emotions. So the southern part actually captures those emotions. What are the different emotions? And this is in a nutshell. So we won't, we fortunately or unfortunately, based on who you ask, we won't do the southern portion in this Bhakti Shastri course. We'll do only up till the 19 chapters. Then, so we'll get into the nectar of devotion, and then please type in your names, and then I can ask one person, one devotee can take responsibility of calling out the names of those who want to read, and then we can start reading. So who wants to call out the name? Okay, you can call. Rambabu Prabhu can call. Thank you. So Rambabu Prabhu, then you go first, and then you can call as well. So we'll start reading a little bit of chapter 2. So here you can just read the first paragraph, please.
Yeah, bro. The first stages of devotion. The three categories of devotional service, which Srila Rupa Goswami describes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, are listed as devotional service in practice, devotional service in ecstasy, and devotional service in pure love of Godhead. There are many subheadings in each of these categories. Generally, it is understood that in the category of devotional service in practice, there are two different qualities. Devotional service in ecstasy has 4 qualities, and devotional service in pure love of Godhead has 6 qualities. These qualities will be explained by Srila Rupa Goswami later on.
Thank you. So Srila Prabhupada, he actually translates it. He says devotional service in practice is sadhana bhakti. So Sanskrit mapping is that devotional service in practice is sadhana bhakti. Then devotional service in ecstasy is bhava bhakti. And devotional service in pure love of Godhead is prema bhakti. So there are 3 different categories. Oftentimes devotees ask, if I am chanting, then why doesn't Krishna come in front of me and show me his beautiful form? Because you said that Sri Krishna Akarshani. Did we read that particular quality or symptom of pure devotional service to Krishna? It is one of the 6 characteristics. It is Sri Krishna Akarshani, which means it attracts Krishna. So then the question might come is, why does not Krishna appear before me when I chant, if it is attracting? So the answer to that is, there are 6 qualities of devotional service, which is Kleshagni and Shubhada are 2. Kleshagni, Shubhada, Sudurlabha, and Moksha Lagutakrita are 4. Kleshagni, Shubhada, Sudurlabha, Moksha Lagutakrita, Sri Krishna Akarshani, and Sandrananda Visheshatma are 6. In the sadhana stage, when the devotees are performing sadhana, only 2 qualities are manifest, which is Kleshagni and Shubhada. So I will share the screen here. Then it will be better understood. Because if you know this, then you won't get frustrated in devotional service. You won't get despondent. So pardon my scribbling again. So you can see Kleshagni and Shubhada. Here I wrote it is in sadhana. These 2 qualities are visible only in the sadhana state. Then Kleshagni, Shubhada, Moksha Lagutakrita, and Sudurlabha. They are visible in bhava stage. For those who are in the stage of bhava, this is visible. And then Sandrananda Visheshatma and Sri Krishna Akarshani, they are visible in the prema state. All the 6 qualities are visible in the prema state. So there is that difference. Without knowing this difference, often devotees are confused. Why is it that For example, I'm not feeling that intense joy that has been promised, that pure love of God, that is such an amazing thing, but I'm unable to feel it. Probably something is wrong here. Maybe it is not as what is promised, but it's something else. But Rupa Goswami clarifies that this happens in the prema stage. For example, one question I often hear is, should I ask Krishna for liberation or not? If you are in the sadhana state, liberation is a big thing. But if you're in the bhava stage, liberation becomes not a big thing. So we can see the same thing based on one's level of devotional service. You want it or you don't want it. So these are the things that Srila Prabhupada writes, and as Ram Babu Prabhu just read, 2 qualities are visible in sadhana, 4 in bhava, and 6 in prema. Is that okay? And that's, but then the question comes is, Prabhu, either you get prema and you're happy, or you don't get it, you are miserable. What's your point? The point is that in the sadhana stage, as soon as you start pure devotional service, kleshagni and shubhada immediately happen. You are free from material miseries, because those miseries are actually giving so much of trouble to the heart. Pure devotional service immediately stops that miseries that coming from attack. At least that's a good return of investment to start with. What do you say? All right. Okay. So let's move on a little bit. Rambabu Prabhu, next 2 readers, please.
Next is Deepika Mataji and Ishwari Radha Devi Mataji.
Deepika Mataji, please.
In this connection, Srila Rupa Goswami suggests that the person eligible for Krishna consciousness or devotional service can be classified by his particular taste. He says that devotional service is a continual process from one's previous life. No one can take to devotional service unless he has had some previous connection with it. For example, suppose in this life I practice devotional service to some extent. Even though it is not 100% perfectly performed, whatever I have done will not be lost. In my next life, from the very point where I stop in this life, I shall begin again. In this way, there is always a continuity. But even if there is no continuity, if only by chance a person takes interest in a pure devotee's instruction, he can be accepted and can advance in devotional service. Anyway, for persons who have a natural taste for understanding books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is easier than for those who are simply accustomed to mental speculation and argumentative process.
Thank you. So one obvious question, this is the thing. Deepika Mataji, if you can read it.
No one can take to devotional service unless he has had some previous connection with it.
So if I have no connection, I cannot take it up. But then it's an infinite regress statement saying that unless I have some connection, I cannot take it up from previous life. At some point, it's a chicken or egg problem, right? If I am doing bhakti, then I must have had it in the previous life. But in the previous life, I did not have it. Then what? Then how did I get bhakti? At what point of time? Is my question clear? Or is my logical thing clear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So the answer to that question is that this is a very fascinating topic. In fact, it's a topic of papers written by many devotee scholars. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur also discusses this in the Madhurya Kadambini in the first section. How does one get bhakti? if one does not have it, at some point he should have it? And the answer to that question is bhakti is possible by the mercy of devotees. And you can have a whole topic on that. I don't want to get into it, but the gist of, or the essence of it is that by having the darshan or the mercy of a pure devotee, one's own devotional service can start. One example in this connection can be that Srila Prabhupada came to the West, and you can see how, well, it is debatable whether those who joined Srila Prabhupada had previous connection with devotional service and were placed in such situation, or they had no connection at all. In any case, you can see how Srila Prabhupada's mercy was there, that these exalted devotees who joined him were born in families which had no Vedic connection, and the upbringing and the lifestyles were so far removed from devotional service. One often wonders, the mercy of a pure devotee is potent, and one can get some connection. So having that connection, now you can see in the next life, somehow or other. Therefore, the verses say yadricha, somehow or other one gets connection, somehow or other one comes to the platform of devotional service. We will leave it at that, because this, I just wanted to talk about the chicken and egg problem kind of situation here. We already discussed this, these three. I will not discuss further. Now, the other point is, what is sadhana bhakti? Oftentimes we know what is sadhana bhakti, but this is the sadhana bhakti. So whoever is next, Ishwari Radhamataji, can read these paragraphs, please.
Practice means enjoying our senses in some particular type of work. Therefore, devotional service in practice means utilizing our different sensory organs in service to Krishna. Some of the senses are meant for acquiring knowledge, and some are meant for executing the conclusions of our thinking, feeling, and willing. So practice means employing both the mind and the senses in practical devotional service. This practice is not for developing something artificial. For example, a child learns or practices to walk. This walking is not unnatural. The walking capacity is there originally in the child, and simply by a little practice, he walks very nicely. Similarly, devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the natural instinct of every living entity. Even uncivilized men like the Aborigines offer their respectful obeisances to something wonderful exhibited by nature's law. And they appreciate that behind some wonderful exhibition or action, there is something supreme. So this consciousness, though lying dormant in those who are materially contaminated, is found in every living entity. And when purified, this is called Krishna consciousness. There are certain prescribed methods for employing our senses and mind in such a way that our dormant consciousness for loving Krishna will be invoked. As much as a child with a little practice can begin to walk, one who has no basic walking capacity cannot walk by practice. Similarly, Krishna consciousness cannot be aroused simply by practice. Actually, there is no such practice. When we wish to develop our innate capacity for devotional service, there are certain processes which, by our accepting and executing them, will cause that dormant capacity to be invoked. Such practice is called sadhana bhakti. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So because we hear a lot about what sadhana bhakti is, so employing our mind and senses in service of Krishna is sadhana bhakti. Then we'll also get a little bit more of the sadhana bhakti. In the sadhana bhakti also, there is the fundamental principle of sadhana bhakti. This is the idea of sadhana means that this is it. So next reader, please.
Gita Amrita Mataji can go.
Gitamrita, Harival.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us an authorized program for this purpose, centered around.
Wait, 1 minute. Read both.
Oh,
One
sorry.
Thank you.
Narad Muni mentions this sadhana bhakti in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 1st chapter, verse 32. He says there to King Yudhishthira, "My dear king, one has to fix his mind on Krishna by any means. That is called Krishna consciousness. It is the duty of the Acharya, the spiritual master, to find the ways and means for his disciple to fix his mind on Krishna. That is the beginning of sadhana bhakti. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us an authorized program for this purpose, centered around the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. This chanting has so much power that it immediately attaches one to Krishna. That is the beginning of sadhana bhakti. Somehow or other, one has to fix his mind on Krishna. The great saint Ambrish Maharaj, although a responsible king, fixed his mind on Krishna, and similarly, anyone who tries to fix his mind in this way will very rapidly make progress in successfully reviving his original Krishna consciousness.
Thank you.
Krishna.
So thank you for reading. So there are 2 points that are really, really important. One is that it is the duty of the Acharya or the spiritual master to find the ways and means for a disciple to fix his mind on Krishna. This is the beginning of sadhana bhakti. And the second thing is Srila Prabhupada, quoting Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us an authorized program for this purpose, centered around the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. This chanting has so much power that it immediately attaches one to Krishna. Our whole fulcrum, our whole lifeline, our whole foundation in Krishna consciousness is somehow or other, whatever way we can do that, if we can carefully chant our rounds, it's probably a very cliche at this point of time. At a time where we need newer and more insightful informations, maybe more clever conclusions of the shlokas, a deeper Sanskrit play on words, or the intellectual aspect of ours needs to satisfy. It might seem cliche, but this is it, that if somehow or other one can chant one's rounds, then it has it is mentioned that this chanting has so much power that it immediately attaches one to Krishna. It's such a great hope that we have. And Srila Prabhupada actually writes in so many places in Bhagavad Gita, wherever Krishna says that always think of me, Srila Prabhupada, in most of the places, as far as I remember, makes it a point to mention that chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra means to think of Krishna. So, and even if one takes initiation, the spiritual master doesn't ask the disciple to read so many pages or do so much of deity worship, or take a vow that in your lifetime at least you will go to visit Vrindavan 108 times. There are no vows like that. The only vow is taken is to chant 16 rounds of Mahamantra every day. So if there is, across at any place, any level of quote unquote management, whether be it managing kids at home where parents are involved, or managing temples where temple managers are involved, or GBCs, or congregation development leaders. It really doesn't matter who or where. If the focus of that particular trust is somehow or other, the members chant 16 rounds every day, and the facilitation is happening for that, then it's a very successful and a rapid way of progressing in spiritual life. All right. So the next paragraph, please, if anybody can read. What's next?
Next is Malati Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Now this sadhana bhakti or practice of devotional service may also be divided into two parts. The first part is called service according to regulative principles. One has to follow these different regulative principles by the order of the spiritual master or the strength of authoritative scriptures, and there can be no question of refusal. That is called vaidhi or regulated. One has to do it without argument. Another part of sadhana bhakti is called raganuga. Raganuga refers to the point at which, by following the regulative principles, one becomes a little more attached to Krishna and executes devotional service out of natural love. For example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning and offer arati, which is a form of deity worship. In the beginning, by the order of his spiritual master, one rises early in the morning and offers arati, but then he develops a real attachment. When he gets this attachment, he automatically tries to decorate the deity and prepare different kinds of dresses and thinks of different plans to execute his devotional service nicely. Although it is within the category of practice, this offering of loving service is spontaneous. So the practice of devotional service, sadhana bhakti, can be divided into two parts, namely regulative and spontaneous.
Thank you. So mapping the Sanskrit and the quiz question, you can type in. So what is regulative and what is spontaneous? Mix and match those two, please. So there is Vaidhi and Raganuga. And can you write in the chat what is Vaidhi and what is Raganuga according to English, please? Or you can unmute. I'm okay. Nobody? Somebody? So Vaidhi is?
Regulated.
And Raganuga is?
Spontaneous.
Spontaneous. So, and Srila Prabhupada writes the difference here. Raganuga is at a point where one becomes more attached to Krishna and executes devotional service out of natural love. It's not, it's below bhava though, but it is above vaidhi, where it's really natural. It becomes like a second nature. And I think Srila Prabhupada, of course, is Mahabhagavat. But then, sometimes coming down to the level of Raganuga, he would say that I cannot live. This every day morning he would get up, and at 1:30 or whatever time he would get up way early in the morning, and then he would just start translating. It was like a natural flow. Nobody told him to do this, or he was not bound, but he was so absorbed in this. So we can get that aspect of Raganuga from Srila Prabhupada. We can perceive it. But on an actual level, he could be on a much, much higher platform. But it is mentioned even the Uttama Adhikari sometimes comes down to the Madhyama to preach, which we'll come to in the next chapter about the three kinds of devotees. So this is good. What else I wanted to share from this particular chapter? Every verse is actually really, really beautiful, every paragraph, and because it's each verse. Then one of the things is who can remember the verse Dhyayato Vishyan Pumsaha from Bhagavad Gita? And if you can unmute yourself.
Sangaste upajayate
And then what happens after that? Next verse.
Krodhot bhavati sammoha.
Okay.
Sammohat smriti brahmshat buddhinasho. Buddhinashat pranashyati.
So pranashyati, correct? What
Yes.
does pranashyati? Pranashyati means completely destroyed, right? Nashyati is destroyed. Pranashyati means completely destroyed. But then what is destroyed here? The soul cannot be destroyed.
The attraction for devotional service will be lost completely.
Thank you. So this is mentioned here. Vanquished means after getting this human form of life, a person does not come out of the entanglement of birth and death and thus misses the golden opportunity. Such a person does not know where he is being thrown. So that is the vanquished. Usually I want to bring it up because people sometimes ask me what is pranashyati means, because the soul is not destructible. But the knowledge of the pure soul is covered and quote unquote destroyed by the matter, thinking that then the jiva will think that I'm just a struggling, just a matter. So. And the most important thing of the sadhana bhakti, or the essence of sadhana bhakti, is this. With all the rules and regulations Srila Rupa Goswami gives, this is the next. Who can read next? Actually, this paragraph, please.
Next is Mahabhava Rasraj Murti Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mahabhava. Please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. In the Padma Puran, also, the same process is advised. There it is said that one should always remember Lord Vishnu. This is called dhyana, or meditation, always remembering Krishna. It is said that one has to meditate with his mind fixed upon Vishnu. Padma Puran recommends that one always fix his mind on the form of Vishnu by meditation and not forget him at any moment. And this state of consciousness is called samadhi, or trance.
Please read the next paragraph as well. Thank you.
Yes, of course. We should always try to mold the activities of our lives in such a way that we will constantly remember Vishnu, or Krishna. What is Krishna consciousness? Whether one concentrates his mind on the four-handed form of Vishnu or on the form of the two-handed Krishna, it is the same. The Padma Puran recommends, somehow or other, always think of Vishnu, without forgetting him under any circumstances. Actually, this is the most basic of all regulative principles. For, when there is an order from a superior about doing something, there is simultaneously a prohibition. When the order is that one should always remember Krishna, the prohibition is that one should never forget him. Within this simple order and prohibition, all regulative principles are found complete.
Thank you. So we can see the crux of sadhana bhakti is mentioned in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Smartavya satatam Vishnur vismartavyo nada jatachit sarva vidhi nishedasyor etayor eva kinkara. That because the another aspect that we can, as a society progresses, as in ISKCON society progresses, we could be having newer and newer forms of awareness of different aspects of scriptures. One example is Srila Prabhupada's time, probably there was not much important given to Purushottam Mass. And nowadays we see that it is a lot of importance is given. And in that connection, there will be, the rules coming out, and the rules of fasting or other forms of, in general, we do have such kind of things coming out. While we can follow the rules, one should keep in mind whether we are able to follow this simple principle, whether this rule is helping me to remember Krishna and never forget him. If not, then we are deviating from the mission of life. And then you get stuck, as Vaisheshika Prabhu says, you major in minor things. And then when you do Bhakti Shastri and read Srila Prabhupada's books, and not Bhakti Shastri, but in general, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, then, and you read them deeply, then you get the essence of what is to be done and what is not to be done. And that way the mind is clear. The clarity of mind is there in spite of, so many other things that are happening in the society, and that can kind of sometimes demotivate and demoralize. My God, so many rules, already I'm doing so much, and this is. So anything that helps you remember Krishna, please accept it. Otherwise, they become minor rules that you can do the best you can. One thing is, it might seem a little counterintuitive that always remember Krishna and never forget him. Does anybody feel a little confused when you hear this, or is it just a dull-headed person like me? I mean, you always remember Krishna, then what's the point in writing never forget him?
Bro, I heard one point from a devotee on this, if you want me to share.
Yes, please.
Always remember Krishna is like, we do sadhana and then we try to remember Krishna. That is like taking inputs into the mind. And never forget him means we don't do any other activities. It's like a pot. We don't create holes so that the inputs that I have taken will go away or drain away. It is like protecting our consciousness, is what he was explaining.
Okay, but isn't just a simple instruction, always remember Krishna, enough? As in, like, when you always remember Krishna, the input is always, even though there is the output is going away or there is a leakage in the pot, but since the input is always coming, is it not enough to keep the thing going? But in any case, Ryan has more insight. I would like to definitely hear.
No, Prabhuji, I was going to say the same thing as Ram Bhakti Prabhu. Or around the same thing.
Thank you. So, in general, the body of Vedas or the Padma Puranas or any Puranas, they have injunctions and they have prohibitions, which is Vidhi and Nishedasur. Why do you need it is because of the lack of specificity of the injunction. Let me give an example. Ryan, do you brush your teeth regularly?
Yes, Prabhu.
Oh, I didn't know that. So, which means like 24 hours a day you are brushing your teeth?
Yeah.
No. So this is where exactly, always remember Krishna can mean like, okay, I remember Krishna for 1 minute every day. It's still always remembering Krishna, right? As in, like, when you use the always, regularly, things like that, it can mean that I can do it in a limited basis, yet that particular phrase is applicable or true. Just like, do you remember Krishna regularly? Yeah, I remember Krishna regularly. Or do you remember Krishna always? Yes, I remember Krishna always. Then what do you remember when you write exams, Prabhu? It can be a joke. I'm just joking, right? So the idea here is always remember without having a very exact time definition, because the scriptures are transcendental to the material world, where the time application can be very specific. For example, you should remember Krishna 24 hours a day. A simple example. Well, 24 hours of which schedule? Is it like human beings? Oh, Prabhu, I remember 24 hours a day of Krishna, but 24 hours of dog's time, which means I'll remember Krishna 15 minutes a day. And then, so you can see how people who are clever can say that always remember Krishna is satisfied without actually doing it completely in total. 24 hours of day, you remember Krishna. Prabhu, yes, 24 hours of a bacteria time, I remember Krishna. Bacteria live for a few hours and die. So you can see how time specificity can hamper the generic application. And therefore, when you say always remember Krishna, then the never forget part comes in to complete it. Okay, so always remember Krishna. Yes, Prabhu, I remember. But some parts, when I forget, I mean, then they is that okay? Anybody has more questions or comments or concerns?
Prabhuji was also explaining one example, like we always, we can say that I always go to ISKCON temple. So that doesn't mean that like we are always continuously going,
temple.
right?
Right, exactly. So this instruction and then the prohibition, that never forget Krishna. So that way it will complete the whole thing without application of time circumstances. Otherwise, you get into the semantics of how much time do you remember, how much percentage of time you remember, and that's just. Yeah, and then the other thing is, Srila Prabhupada discusses that this is that this particular principle is applicable to everybody. So this is the next, whoever is in line to read can read this.
Next is Naveen Dawlat Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Naveen.
Yeah. This regulative principle is applicable to all varnas and ashramas, the castes and occupations of life. There are 4 varnas, namely the Brahmanas, priests and intellectuals, the Kshatriyas, warriors and statesmen, the Vaishyas, businessmen and farmers, and Shudras, laborers and servants. There are also 4 standard ashramas, namely Brahmanacharya, student life, Gruhastha, householder, Vanaprastha, retired, and Sannyasa, renounced. The regulative principles are not only for the Brahmacharis or the celibate students to follow, but are applicable for all. It does not matter whether one is a beginner or a brahmachari or is very advanced, a sannyasi. The principle of remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly and not forgetting him at any moment is meant to be followed by everyone without fail.
Thank you. So I think when we progress in our own spiritual life, then we always can come back to this particular statement. Whether my service, whether my association, whether the place I am staying, my family, my job, any major decisions in life or any things in life, you can always put this principle in the center, and then you can make a decision and be confident about it. When you say that, is it helping me to remember Krishna or helping me forget him? So then you can always, it's easier. Otherwise, mind, it's hard to make decisions without knowing much. But you can take this statement of Padma Purana to the bank, and it will not be the loser. Then Srila Prabhupada goes much into the Varnashrama system a little bit. And then, the other aspect is that as society grows, you will hear about Varnashrama system as well. And, there is a noble attempt by some devotees to kind of establish that. And it's all good. But we'll also have this as an adjunct to that particular mission. So please, next person can read this.
Next is Ankita Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Ankita Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thus, the Krishna consciousness movement is so nice that there is no need of even designating oneself Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. Let everyone be engaged in whatever occupation he now has. Simply let him worship Lord Krishna by the result of his activities in Krishna consciousness. That will adjust the whole situation, and everyone will be happy and peaceful within this world. In the Narada Pancharatra, the regulative principles of devotional service are described as follows. Any activities sanctioned in the revealed scriptures and aiming at the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are accepted by saintly teachers as the regulative principles of devotional service. If one regularly executes such service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, then gradually he rises to the platform of serving in pure love of God. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nice, huh?
It's amazing.
Yeah, here it's just Srila Prabhupada makes it really, just simple and keeps it. It makes it universally applicable, and I think, yeah. So this chapter, we've done the second chapter. So I really would like to open up for questions, for comments, for any concerns. Yes, Rambhava.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, this Sudurlabha aspect, right? So how a devotee in Bhava Bhakti exhibits it? Does that mean that, he is extremely careful in not losing it? I was trying to compare that with Bharata Maharaj. He was a little bit neglectful even though he was in Bhava stage. So just want to understand on that aspect.
So if I understand your question, the Sudurlabha aspect of it, how is it applicable to Bhava Bhakti?
Yes, Prabhuji. So these are supposed to be exhibited by the devotees at different stages of devotional service, right?
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be exhibiting a Sudurlabha characteristics? Is he extremely careful for devotional service? Not losing the devotional service, or how does it to be taken? And I was just trying to compare that with Bharata Maharaj situation.
So we'll refresh, or we'll just revisit the concept of Sudurlabha to first start with, and then I'll answer the second part of your question. So Sudurlabha is mentioned as very difficult to obtain, and Srila Rupa Goswami, he says that pure devotional service in Bhava Bhakti is very difficult to obtain for two reasons. The first reason is that no matter how much of penance and tapasya and austerity and other things you do, you will not achieve it. And the second aspect is, you do all these sadhanas of devotion without attachment for a long time, you will not achieve it. Even if you do it with intense attachment for a short time, Krishna is not willing to give you devotional service that easily. And he quotes a verse from Bhagavatam where he says that Krishna will award mukti so easily, but he will not give pure devotional service. So that is the understanding of Sudurlabha. Now, when devotee achieves Bhava Bhakti, is he or she careful? Yes, they're absolutely careful. In the case of Bharat Maharaj, few things have happened. The Acharyas have explained that the Lord or Bharat Maharaj himself have performed this activity to show to the world that even on the platform of Bhava, there is a possibility of fall down. And it's mentioned also as we read to the Nectar of Devotion, we'll come to that place where in Bhava stage, there is still a tinge of material desires or imperfections. It is just like you put a bucket of ink into Pacific Ocean. Can you see the ink after you put that bucket of ink into Pacific Ocean, Rambhava Prabhu?
No, Prabhuji.
You cannot see it, but it's there. The same way, the contamination of material existence is subtle, And so even on the level of bhava, there is a possibility of falling down. Whether, the Lord inspired Maharaj Bharat to kind of go into that route, or Bharat Maharaj himself wanted to show to the world that there is a definite fall down on bhava, that the acharyas kind of are not 100% clear, but that is my understanding. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. So I was just trying to understand when it says that Klesha, Agni and Subhata, so the results are clearly visible in a sadhaka devotee, sincere sadhaka devotee, and moksha labhata krut and sudurlabha. So I was just trying to understand how they are exhibited by a devotee on a bhava platform, or how he sees, basically. Yeah, I got the some understanding.
How he sees is something we can just pick up one verse and see that what is the understanding of the devotee on that level. So let's go look up one verse and then we can talk about it. We can move on. Mukta Mataji, can you do the verse with me, please?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Nanakapristham nacha parameshtyam
Nanakapristham nacha parameshtham
nasarvabhaumam narasadhipatyam
nasarvabhaumam narasadhipatyam
na yoga siddhir apunarbhavam va
na yoga siddhir apunarbhavam va
samanjasatva virahaya kankshe.
samanjasatva virahaya kankshe.
Translation, please.
O my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruvaloka, the heavenly planets, or the planet where Lord Brahma resides, nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet.
So, thank you much. So, Rambabu Prabhu, here you can see, right?
Yes,
the word is, I do not even want liberation. Then people might say you guys are crazy, because okay, I understand that you don't want anything of matter or material things like heavenly planets or planet where Lord Brahma resides. Nor you don't want to be the supreme ruler of all earthly planets or lower planetary system. But what's wrong with liberation? And then only in the bhava stage can one actually say, nah, I don't want liberation. I'm genuinely, I don't mind wherever Krishna puts me. But if you are not in that stage, there are so many millions of people, at least in India, who will do anything for moksha. And I know for a fact that some other sampradayas, actually, the ultimate goal is moksha. And is that helpful a little bit? Or you
Yes,
have follow?
Prabhuji. No, yes, Prabhuji, it is helpful. I think the life of Rudrasura also clearly demonstrates that he was not caring to win the battle also. And apart from that,
he wanted Indra to kill him ASAP. It's like
Yeah.
Indra didn't want to fight. He was so dejected after that he didn't fight. And then Vritrasura encouraged him, come on, pick up your thing. And here is the beauty of Vritrasura. He knew he was dying, yet he was waiting for Indra to kill him so that he can go back to Vaikuntha. He was like so absorbed in that. You can see the difference of those devotees. In any case, you get the idea. So thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Ishwari Radhamati.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I don't know if you mentioned or not. You just said something about a verse that says in the Padma Purana about whatever action you perform, if you want to know whether it's good or bad, you're saying something about that. Could you?
So Padma Purana is that verse, Smartavya Satatam Vishnu. That is the particular verse from Padma Purana that I was mentioning about. Whatever activities you want to do in life, and sometimes the decisions are hard to make, but if you place the decision within the realm of this verse, whether the activity is going to help me remember Krishna or the decision that I'm going to make is going to help me remember Krishna or not, then it's easier to make that decision. Should I take up that new job or take up that new course or, have more children, marry that, say, could be a million kinds of decisions that are going on in our lives. And when one places this verse in the center of my decision making, whether that will help me remember Krishna or not help me remember Krishna, then even perchance the decision we made might look regrettable later. The fact that we made it based on our own devotional attitude, Krishna will be pleased, whatever be the outcome. Is that helpful, Mata?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? All right, Ramba, Prabhu, we can work with the next set of leaders.
Sure. Next is Mona Mataji.
Yeah, very well, Manisha. Okay, so the next verse is that who is eligible for doing devotional service? It might seem pretty interesting concept, but let's discuss a little bit about that. Srila Rupa Goswami says that who is eligible to perform devotional service to Krishna. And I'm going to share the screen. Manisha, give me a minute here. Okay, you can read this right from the top. Go ahead, Manisha.
On the chapter 3, eligibility of the candidate for accepting devotional service. On the account of his associations with Mahatmas or great souls, 100% engaged in devotional service of the Lord, one may attain a little bit of attraction for Sri Krishna. But at the same time, one may remain very much attached to fruitive activities and material sense enjoyment and not be prepared to undergo the different types of renunciation. Such a person, if he has unflinching attraction to Krishna, becomes an eligible candidate for discharging devotional service. This attraction for Krishna consciousness in association with pure devotees is a sign of great fortune. It is confirmed by Lord Chaitanya that only the fortunate persons, by the mercy of both a bona fide spiritual master and Krishna, will get the seed of devotional service. In this connection, Lord Krishna says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 20th chapter, verse 8, "My dear Uddhava, only by exceptional fortune does someone become attracted to me, and even if one is not completely detached from fruitive activities or is not completely attached to devotional service, such service is quickly effective."
Thank you. That gives great hope, doesn't it? So the crux is somehow or other, that the Bhagavatam is so clear, it's yadricha. Somehow or other, if you get attracted to Krishna, then your life's problems are solved. Even though one might not be actually performing that kind of devotional service as is mentioned. And it's mentioned that when you get attached to Krishna, the vestiges of material enjoyment or fruitive tendencies might still remain. And that is where we see the devotees having this struggle between, studies or job or family on one hand, and then, our Krishna consciousness and bhakti and devotional service on the other hand. So because we are not perfect in our devotional service, there is always the little bit of quote unquote struggle going on the other end. But if we can somehow or other remain steady in our spiritual life, then Krishna is saying that service is effective, that attached, because you are doing service to me, attached to me, it is very effective. All right, next devotee, please. To read Rambam.
Next is Samskriti Mataji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Devotees may be divided into three classes. The devotee in the first or uppermost class is described as follows. He is very expert in the study of relevant scriptures, and he is also expert in putting forward arguments in terms of those scriptures. He can very nicely present conclusions with perfect discretion and can consider the ways of devotional service in a decisive way. He understands perfectly that the ultimate goal of life is to attain the transcendental loving service of Krishna, and he knows that Krishna is the only object of worship and love. The first class devotee is one who has strictly followed the rules and regulations under the training of a bona fide spiritual master and has sincerely obeyed him in accord with revealed scriptures. Thus, being fully trained to preach and become a spiritual master himself, he is considered first class. The first class devotee never deviates from the principles of higher authority, and he attains firm faith in the scriptures by understanding with all reason and arguments. When we speak of arguments and reasons, it means arguments and reasons on the basis of revealed scriptures. The first class devotee is not interested in dry, speculative methods meant for wasting time. In other words, one who has attained a mature determination in the matter of devotional service can be accepted as the first class devotee.
Thank you. What are some of the points that you liked about first class devotee? And this question here. So in Sanskrit, what is first class devotee written as or called as?
Uttama Bhakti.
Excellent. So Uttama Adhikari. And then, so there are three types of devotees, which is Uttama, then Madhyama, and Kanishta. So we are going in the descending order. So we'll see the next. So we can see how the other reason we need to know all these things on a practical level is within the society. Anyway, we'll come to that point a little bit later. So probably we can discuss the Madhyama devotee now. Who's next to read?
Next is Ryan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Very well, Ryan.
The second class devotee has been defined by the following symptoms. He is not very expert in arguing on the strength of revealed scripture, but he has firm faith in the objective. The purport of this description is that the second class devotee has firm faith in the procedure of devotional service unto Krishna, but he may sometimes fail to offer arguments and decisions on the strength of revealed scripture to an opposing party. But at the same time, he is still undaunted within himself as to his decision that Krishna is the supreme object of worship.
Hare Krishna. The other point that Madhyama Adhikari is mentioned in Bhagavatam is he is friendly to the Lord and his devotees. He is compassionate to those who are ignorant. And then he avoids those who are envious and atheists. So that's another thing. So a Madhyama Adhikari necessarily has to make that discrimination. Otherwise, if one is not strong enough, and even on the Madhyama level, if one is not avoiding the atheistic and the envious class of people, there is a chance that he or she might again fall down from the Madhyama position. So one has to be having that discrimination as well. So that's another aspect of Madhyama Adhikari. So let's see the Kanishta or the beginner. Who's next?
Next is Mukta Mataji.
Please.
The neophyte or third class devotee is one whose faith is not strong and who, at the same time, does not recognize the decision of the revealed scripture. The neophyte's faith can be changed by someone with strong arguments or by an opposite decision. Unlike the second class devotee, who also cannot put forward arguments and evidences from the scriptures, but who still has all faith in the objective, the neophyte has no firm faith in the objective. Thus, he is called the neophyte devotee.
Thank you. One example is, I'll give a simple example. And Avajananti Mamudha. Which verse is that?
I think that is verse 9.11.
9.11. Sorry, I should have done that. Thank you. Thank you. So somebody can say that, I can give you proof that God is impersonal. God has no form. God has no qualities. And this is the proof. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanum ashritam. Manushim means human being. Tanum means body. Ashritam means taking shelter of. I have no form and I have taken shelter in this human form. You can see how quickly somebody with superior logic can use scriptures to turn the faith of people who are not strongly established. Then you will be confused with the various arguments. I believe in scriptures, but scriptures are saying like this. And then it's so clear, Manushim Tanum Ashritaha, which means that the Lord is taking shelter of a human body, which means that since he's taking shelter of a human body, he has no human body. He's formless. That's my conclusion. So you can see how it comes to the same point. I gave you a simple example. The neophyte's faith can be changed by someone with strong arguments by opposite position. So God from personal became impersonal because he quoted something. And the arguments by other schools of thought, especially Mayavadis, are full of this word juggleries, which can really change the mind, because the devotees are not on that level to know the truth, at least on the beginning stages. Then it can easily kind of turn that argument. So one has to be really careful. So after describing the neophytes are classified into 4 categories. Who wants to read next?
Next is Madhav Prem Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Madhav Prem Prabhu.
Further classification of the neophyte devotees made in the Bhagavad Gita. It is stated that 4 classes of men, namely those who are in distress, those who are in need of money, those who are inquisitive, and those who are wise, begin devotional service and come to the Lord for relief in the matter of their respective self-satisfaction. They go into some place of worship and pray to God for mitigation of material distress, or for some economic development, or to satisfy their inquisitiveness. And a wise man who simply realizes the greatness of God is also counted among the neophytes. Such beginners can be elevated to the second class or first class platform if they associate with pure devotees.
Except for the scholars who can remember that verse from the Bhagavad Gita. which is 4 classes of men. Yeah.
Bhajante Mam Prabhuji.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Deepika.
Bhajante Mam. Janasu Kritina Arjuna. Artho Jignasur Arthi. Yani Cha Bharat Rishabh.
Excellent. Excellent. And then the thing is, each of the examples are given. So let's read this. This is like a nice thing. You'll get more deeper understanding. Who's next? Actually, let's see if there is anybody who didn't get a chance. I'll volunteer them.
Yeah, sure, bro.
Krishangi Mataji, you're there? Or you're busy? Okay. Divyangi Lalita Mataji, you got a chance to read? Do you want to read? Are you able to read? What's the situation?
Yes, Prabhu, I can read, Prabhu.
Okay, please go ahead.
An example of the neophyte class is Maharaj Dhruva. He was in the need of his father's kingdom and therefore engaged himself in devotional service to the Lord. Then in the end, when he was completely purified, he declined to accept any material benediction from the Lord. Similarly, Gajendra was distressed and prayed to Krishna for protection, after which he became a pure devotee. Similarly, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sananda, and Sanat Kumara were all in the category of wise, saintly persons, and they were also attracted by devotional service. A similar thing happened to the assembly in the Naimisharanya forest, headed by the sage Saunaka. The sages were inquisitive and were always asking Suta Goswami about Krishna. Thus, they achieved the association of a pure devotee and became pure devotees themselves. So that is the way of elevating oneself. In whatever condition one may be, if he is fortunate enough to associate with pure devotees, then very quickly he is elevated to the second class or first class platform. Thank you, Prabhuji.
So the reason why I'm placing emphasis on understanding the types of devotees is within ISKCON, it's an open society, which means that we do not have any restriction on who can join our society. It's open to all, but then when so many different kinds of people or devotees join ISKCON, it is important for us to distinguish based on the Shastric authority the nature of their devotion to Krishna. Before I jump into that particular topic, I want to have a firm disclaimer, and I want all the devotees to say, I understand and read the terms of agreement. And the terms of agreement is this. Please understand, we are not here to discriminate, judge, or lump devotees into particular buckets and think that we are higher. It's a very, very dangerous thing to do that. We all agree with that. But having said that, our own internal development in Krishna consciousness can happen if we get a fair idea of what the devotee is on or what is the level or platform of that devotee. And that can be seen by their activities, that can be seen by their words that they speak or the lectures that they give. You can see which level they are on and what their aspirations are. It's easy to tell, like it or not, it will fall out, it will slip out. If a person is, again, this is giving an example, if a person wants to make a lot of followers, that's the goal of that person, and that's one of the predominating goals for the devotional service, then they will be unhappy if very few people show up for the class, right? Because the whole idea is, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that if nobody comes, preach to the walls, speak to the walls. So you can see the comparison of those who are on that level versus the idea is to discriminate so that we can associate and reciprocate and respect the devotees accordingly. If you don't do that, then everybody is a pure devotee And then when those who are on the Kanishta platform don't exhibit the signs of pure devotee, then you will be disappointed, saying that everybody is a useless person. You can see how material frustration with the devotee community can happen if there is no clear indication. Is that okay? Is that helpful? So
Yes.
yeah, one has to associate and serve the pure devotees or Uttamadhikaris. One should make friends with Madhyama, and one should be compassionate on Kanishta. And knowing that Kanishta people change, and sometimes devotees leave ISKCON. And it's not just new, it has happened quite a few times all over the time since Prabhupada's time. Somebody comes to ISKCON having some issues or concerns or troubles, and somehow they do some bhakti. The health has become better, the family situation has become better, maybe the job has become better. They will say, all right, the purpose for which I came to Krishna has been served. Then there is no longer need to serve, and they don't show up in the temple at all. So it's Kanishta mentality. That mentality is something like, I need God for something, now it's fulfilled. Why do I need him for, kind of thing? Or somebody comes and says, there is a better kind of, there is a, I'm making up this community. Don't do it. There is a community that's called Art of Dying. So you should join that community. It is great. This bhakti is not, and you can give, Ryan got the joke. Thank you, Ryan. You kind of get carried away by the strong arguments. So then you will see people come, people leave. So one should get disturbed by saying that, oh my God, people are leaving, so this is a useless place. No, it can be a personal choice or their level of advancement as well. So there is a reason why, based on Prabhupada's teachings, if we can analyze that, then we can seek out also the association. In ISKCON, the association you choose depends on you. Who inspires you in Krishna consciousness? You can't choose your family because your parents and your brothers and siblings are set, but you can definitely choose the friends and whom you associate within even the society itself for your own advancement in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, helpful? Is that okay?
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, one question. I'm trying to map the classes of devotees with the categories, right? So I guess the first class devotee can be in sadhana bhakti or bhava bhakti, or is there a mapping there? First class devotee, obviously, the bhava means he has to be first class devotee.
Good question, good point. There is no hard and fast mapping like that. But we'll come to also, in the Nectar of Devotion, we'll come to the Adav Shraddha. It's a very famous verse, Adav Shraddha Tatav Sangam. When we see the goalposts of devotion, then we can actually map them to a little bit, we can map them to Uttama and Madhyama. Even amongst Uttama, Madhyama and Kanishta, if one thing I humbly request you is devotional service or the spiritual concepts are not pure black and white. I cannot lump a person into one particular category. There can be, just like if a person is, Ryan, how old are you?
Prabhuji, I'm 12.
Huh?
12.
12. Okay, Mahabhav is 15. Now, is he a child? No. Is he adult? No. He's somewhere in between. So there is always those gray areas. So there could be that a person is moving from Madhyama to Uttama, and then there are symptoms of Uttama, but they're not yet fully developed. But nevertheless, he's on that platform. So we cannot have like clear-cut distinctions. And other aspect, Uttama can again become Madhyama, right? Because if that person, for some reason or other, that person loses faith after serving ISKCON for 30 years or 40 years or 50 years. And it has happened quite a few times. They lost the faith for whatever be the reason, we can get into it. And they stop chanting, or they are no longer associating with devotees. From Uttama, they could come down again to Madhyama and Kanishta. So those things are not like fixed things. They can keep changing. But usually Uttama Adhikari doesn't fall down that easily. If you're on that state, the fall down is less. That's another aspect. They can fall down, but the chances are less. Kanishta, chances are high. So it's again a matter of chance. Is that helpful?
Yes, Prabhu, it's very clear. Thank you.
Other questions? Any comments, questions? Uttamataji, you didn't read. Do you want to read?
Sure, Prabhu.
Okay, I'll take it. Mata, you are unmuted or you are unmuted?
Yes, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You want to read?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, then back to you, Rambhav Prabhu. After that, we get the second round. All right, please go ahead.
But Prabhu, I can't see the screen.
Oh, that's because I didn't share. My apologies.
Oh, I have a book I can.
No. Right now here it's there. Don't worry.
Okay. So starting from these four, right?
Correct.
These four types of devotees have been described in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and they have all been accepted as pious. Without becoming pious, no one can come to devotional service. It is explained in Bhagavad Gita that only one who has continually executed pious activities and whose sinful reactions in life have completely stopped can take to Krishna consciousness. Others cannot. The Neophyte devotees are classified into 4 groups: the distressed, those in need of money, the inquisitive, and the wise, according to the gradation of their pious activities. Without pious activities, if a man is in distressed condition, he becomes an agnostic, a communist, or something like that, because he does not firmly believe in God. He thinks that he can adjust his distressed condition by totally disbelieving in him.
Did you see any cases like that, Uttaramataji?
Yes.
Yeah, practically the whole world is like that. One important point that we need is, oftentimes there is a guilt amongst devotees. Arey, I'm not a pure devotee. I have some material desires. Since I have material desires, and they say you should not ask Krishna for any material desires, because then you will say, okay, what can I do now? Maybe just give up this Krishna consciousness altogether and maybe worship the demigods, or just work harder and get my results. Please. It doesn't matter if you have material desires or if you are on a pure devotional platform. Please worship Krishna. Ask him for whatever is there in your heart for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, Krishna himself says that those who approach me, even with material desires, are really pious souls. They are really pious souls. Without that piety, you can't even approach Krishna. And then the point number 2 is that, okay, they should not ask Krishna anything except for pure devotional service. So I will try to ask him, but Krishna knows what is there in your heart. How can you hide anything from Krishna? He's sitting in your heart. He is the heart of your heart. He is the soul of your soul, which means he knows exactly what you are thinking. He knows your past, your present, and how your future is going to turn out most of the times. I'll leave that a caveat. So to be very honest before Krishna is the best course of action. Krishna, I have this desire. And Bhagavatam is replete with incidents like that. And the beauty is that when you approach Krishna, even if there is a material desire, Mahabhav, you and me, let's read this verse together.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Satyam dishatyartitamartito nrinam.
Satyam deshatyartita tam artitanrinam.
Okay, it's okay, no problem. Let's do it again. It's a little tongue twister. Satyam deshatyartitamartito nrinam.
Satyam deshatyartatitam artitanrinam.
Naivarthado yad punararthitayataha.
Naivarthato yat punarartitayatah.
Swayam vidatte bhajatamanichchatam.
Svayam vidhatte bhajatamanichchatam.
Ichchapidanam nijapada-pallavam.
Ichhabhidhanam nijapada-pallavam.
Translation, please.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead fulfills the material desires of a devotee who approaches him with such motives, but he does not bestow benedictions upon the devotee that will cause him to demand more benedictions again. However, the Lord willingly gives the devotee shelter at his own lotus feet, even though such a person does not aspire for it, and that shelter satisfies all his desires. That is the Supreme Personality's special mercy.
What is the Supreme Personality's special mercy, Mahava?
It is that that he does not bestow benedictions upon the devotee that will cause him to demand more benedictions again. However, the Lord willingly gives devotee shelter at his own lotus feet, even though he does not aspire for it.
That is a special mercy. That even though, so that is the beauty. So you approach Krishna with material desires, he will fulfill your desires, but he'll give buy one, get one free. He'll give his lotus feet, and that will satisfy all the desires. So it's better to be honest with Krishna in the course of one's actions, and Krishna will very willingly and happily reciprocate. And he is the supreme bestower of all bestowers, and he is capable of fulfilling one's desires more than one asks for. He is called Vanchatita. From what you vancha or what you desire, Atita, he will give you much more than what you ask. Sudama, he went to Krishna asking for just some money so that he can live by, he can sustain it. But when he went back, this famous story from Bhagavatam, he had opulences like that of Indra. Probably he wouldn't need that much, but this is the mercy of Krishna. So whether one be in any position or have any material desires, it's better to be honest with Krishna. And he can make things perfect, and he can adjust it and satisfy everyone's heart, to the best, in such a way that that person is completely satisfied. Fair?
Prabhuji, but there is an hesitation to ask also, right? So this is a material desire, and we clearly know that it may not be good for me. So there is some hesitation in the heart to ask if there is some material desire.
Don't hesitate. Don't hesitate with Krishna, because there is no other shelter than him. You can hesitate, and you can express your hesitation to Krishna. And I'll give the answer. Kardama Muni performed severe austerities, and he saw the Lord face to face. Lord Vishnu, who is rarely giving darshan to anybody, he gave him darshan face to face. And he asked, "What do you want?" And Kardama said, "My Lord, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't be asking you this, but I want a wife." Lord Vishnu at that point in face palm, like this. He didn't say, "Really? You called me all the way from Vaikunta so that you can have a wife?" The birds, the beasts, the animals, they have wives or not? But Lord Vishnu never said that. He was so gracious, so charming, so wonderful. He says, "I know. On the third day from now, Swayambhava Manu will come and will offer his daughter to you in marriage, Devahuti." And the beauty is Kardama and Devahuti enjoyed, like, if you can read magazines about how the quote unquote celebrities enjoy in this world and which places of vacation they go and what sort of toys they buy, like yachts and mega mansions and whatever. It's pale, it's insignificant. It is condemnable compared to what enjoyment Kardama and Devahuti had, and it's there in pages of Bhagavatam. In fact, they had their own 7-story mansion. They had a mansion of huge castle, complete with lakes, with ponds, with everything. Oh yeah, so what's the big deal? I have the castle as well, with repletes with lakes and thing. But this castle could fly all over the universe. Heavenly planets, it could go. It could go anywhere all over the universe, along with all the birds and maidservants, and they had tremendous amount of pleasure flying in that castle. And when Kardama came back, he had 9 daughters and 1 son, Kapila. Now, Kardama could, after enjoying all this, my God, he must be so entangled. No, when Kapila Deva was born, he went off to the forest, his spirit of renunciation intact, because Krishna makes sure that when he gives, he never asked for a wife again. That is the beauty. Is that helpful, Ram Babu?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Today I have been told we have to stop sharp at 2:30, which is good news for most of you. I'm just joking. I'm so grateful. You're such a wonderful, attentive audience. I'm inspired. So, any questions, any comments? I know we are going a little slow. We have 19 chapters to cover. So I really, really want you to tell me, should we speed up so that we can cover faster? Or go at this pace so that we can understand, but it might mean extra classes so that, you know, we get into the nitty-gritty of those things. Ryan is raising his hand. How can I serve you, Ryan?
This personally works for me. I'm not sure about the other devotees, but it would be good if we could have class every week. I mean, not every week, but more frequent, and we could do the same pace.
Thank you. All right, Gitamrita.
Same
Yes.
for you. I think that it's nice to understand and go more into depth about the verses and the meanings of each chapters, and if extra classes are fine, it's fine with me.
This is amazing. You kids are born from which world? ISIS. You must actually, it is said that unless they have connection with devotion service in the previous lives, you cannot have this. It's like the first thing in your situation, Ryan and Gitamrita would be like, okay, when is the exam? I need to, I'll read and I'll thank you. But here you want to listen. That shows the sign of your sincerity and eagerness. And I'm much appreciative of that fact. The amount of information that can be extracted from the teacher depends on the audience. So you are, I wanted to give you this, but you are extracting this much. So the credit goes to you. It's a thank you. It's a tough talk. It's not tough, but it needs a little bit of explanation to understand the beauty and the depth of what Srila Prabhupada and Rupa Goswami are giving us, and how valuable and informational it is, and how practical it is as we go in devotion service. Yeah, thank you. I'll keep that in mind, and you can always share the feedback as we go ahead. So. Anybody had any other thoughts apart from Ryan and Gitamrita?
Prabhu, this is a good idea. I like going in detail, in depth, and trying to understand what is actually, the verses are saying. So thank you so much. I like slow, but it's better understanding.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Otherwise, it leaves, I mean, yeah, for the sake of doing the exam, for the sake of reading, in a strict sense of speaking, 130 pages, or it should take maybe all these super kids here and super intelligent adults. 130 pages, all right, I'll be done in 2 days max. But then when you go slow, but the retaining or the retention of the matter or the application of the matter might be missing if you go that fast. So when you go slow, then we understand the concepts, and more importantly, how can I apply in my own spiritual life? I think that would be the goal. So thank you. All right. We'll go a little bit more about the happiness in 3 different stages, and then there are a bunch of shlokas which Srila Rupa Goswami says. Okay, I'll complete this. Who is next to read? We have about 18 minutes.
Krishnandi Mataji is available to read.
Excellent. All right, Krishnandi Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
As stated before, there are 3 kinds of happiness: material, spiritual, and devotional. Devotional service and the happiness due to its execution are not possible as long as one is materially affected. If someone has a desire for material enjoyment or for becoming one with Supreme, these are both considered material concepts. Because the impersonalist cannot appreciate the spiritual happiness of association and the exchange of loving affairs with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their ultimate goal is to become one with the Lord. This concept is simply an extension of the material idea. In the material world, everyone is trying to be topmost head man among all his fellow men or neighbors. Either communally, socially, or nationally, everyone is competing to be greater than all others in the material concept of life. This greatness can be extended to the unlimited, so that one actually wants to become one with the greatest of all, the Supreme Lord. This is also a material concept, although maybe a little more advanced. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Here, Srila Prabhupada, earlier we discussed about the 3 kinds of happiness. The happiness which is derived from sense enjoyment or matter, which is material, happiness from Brahmananda, or merging into Brahman, which is beyond the material realm, which is, Srila Prabhupada writes it as spiritual, and the happiness got through pure devotional service, which is devotional. So that is the mapping here that Srila Prabhupada does. And it's a nice analogy, because if you are trying to compete, then in the Mayavad stage, then by performing my severe austerities and by getting perfect knowledge, I can become God. Or I've competed and successfully became God, kind of situation happens. So Krishna can never, he can never become equal to Krishna, because of the sheer fact that Krishna is Krishna and you are you, and that the Lord makes that distinction. It's not we are making it up. Krishna makes that distinction in the Bhagavad Gita itself. If you are looking at the verse, then it is the Natve Vaham Jatanasam verse in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita that we can get into. Then Srila Prabhupada explains about how those who are engaged in pure devotional service of Krishna, they really are so absorbed. The joy of serving Krishna is so intense, and the connection with Krishna with no desires or no motivation is so satisfying, so pleasing to the heart, that you will say, I want nothing. I mean, we read earlier verse of Nanaka Prishtam, where Nachaparameshtyam, Vritrasura's words. It's such an amazingly satisfying thing that nothing in exchange, I mean, I'll not accept anything in exchange for that, even up to liberation. But then some people might say you are a loser, because Krishna can give you so much more and you're just asking for Krishna, nothing. Here, actually, that point is refuted. These two things that if you can read, please. The next person.
Next is Malati Mataji.
A pure devotee never cares for liberation. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prayed to Krishna, "My dear son of Nanda, I do not want any material happiness in the shape of many followers, nor immense opulence in wealth, nor any beautiful wife, nor do I want cessation from material existence. I may take birth many times, one after another, but what I pray for from you is that my devotion unto you may always remain unflinching." The attention of a pure devotee is so much attracted to glorification of the Lord's pastimes, namely name, qualities, forms, etc., that the devotee does not care for mukti. Sri Bilva Mangala Thakura has said, "If I am engaged in devotional service unto you, my dear Lord, then very easily can I perceive your presence everywhere. And as far as liberation is concerned, I think liberation stands at my door with folded hands, waiting to serve me. To pure devotees, therefore, liberation and spiritual emancipation are not very important things."
Wonderful. Thank you. So, but as I mentioned earlier, it should come naturally. We can have it in a principle, but for example, if I'll give a simple example, I'll pick up Mahabhav. Hopefully he doesn't. I'll pick on Mahabhav. Hopefully he doesn't feel. He doesn't curse me. So. Extra courses somehow come his way in the school, and he's like, really, a lot of courses are there. He might occasionally kind of he might say that, Krishna, I'm in distress, with all these courses. So please, help me, is one way of achieving or doing this. Or, oh no, I shouldn't ask Krishna for these paltry things. If you are not yet there where he is, I don't know his advancement, but I'm just picking up an example like that. It's better to be honest, to say to Krishna that, and then the other aspect is, if one is involved in pure devotional service to Krishna, then by God's grace, one easily passes over all these, for example, extra courses that Mahabhav might have to take. As in, if one's focus is always on Krishna, things become a little more easier. And even if they don't turn out to one's liking, one is not so much disturbed. One is okay. I'm sorry, that was not a best example. Mahabhav, you should kind of forgive me on that. Somehow that didn't come out well. But more questions, more comments. I would like to have more lively discussions if there is any. Any other final questions? We can stop here for today, 10 minutes ahead of time, because the chapter 3 actually ends with bunch of verses. You can read the chapter. There are a lot of verses given by Srila Rupa Goswami, highlighting about how the happiness through pure devotional service is so intense that there is nothing needed. But if we are not in that position yet, then we try to perform our devotional service to come to that level. But at the same time, we be realistic with where we are in. I think one of the most important things is what my adhikar is, or what my qualification is, and how I can improve. If one prematurely tries to be on a platform that he or she is not, then it leads to some frustration. Why is this? So you get the idea. Questions, more questions or comments or concerns? When I say questions, I think of Rambabu Prabhu for some reason. He asks questions, really nice questions. Any questions, Rambabu Prabhu?
No, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Ankita Mataji.
Not yet, Prabhu.
Okay. So next, just to give you the next chapter is titled Devotional Services, Service Surpasses All Liberation. We will read that a little bit. And then probably cover a few chapters next week as well. So I'll pick and choose the passages that we need to. And the supporting verses are something that you can read on your own. So at least if you understand the concept of what Srila Rupa Goswami is presenting, then the supporting verses actually make sense. So, all right. Anything else?
Oh, so are we having classes every weekend? Or
No. I think so. We were supposed to have a class 2 weeks ago, but we had Radhesham Prabhu come to the temple and we couldn't broadcast from the temple. So we had to move that class. But otherwise, there is a schedule that is there and we'll follow that schedule from now onwards. My only concern with that is, according to the schedule, we must be completing about 6 chapters or so by now, 6 or 7 chapters. Since we are going a little slow, I just wanted to make sure if the space is okay. That's the reason I asked the question. So, and the other aspect is that the chapters are for reading, not for me to cover as much, but we'll extend always. I'm more than happy to extend the classes or have extra classes, and devotees, go in deep, as Gita Amrita and Ryan were mentioning, rather than just go superficially and then leave everybody like, what happened here? Kind of things. All right. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you for joining today. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Rupali Mataji, you raised your hand before I...
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I have a question. If a devotee falls down, can he or she rise up again?
Yes, we discussed in the Nectar of Devotion. We actually will come and discuss that. What happens if the devotee falls down? What sort of hot ghee one needs to drink or walk on the coals? Which coals you have to buy from Home Depot, light them up and walk on them to do prayashchita, or how many days you need to fast, or you have to stay in Alaska wearing only t-shirt and shorts for 20 days. Nothing like that. So the gist is, if perchance the devotee falls down, the Nectar of Devotion says that one should just continue with the process of devotional service because it's so potent. The accidental fall downs should not affect. But we'll come to that. When we come to that stage, then we'll discuss it at depth. Is that okay, Rupali Mati?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. All right. Krishangi Mataji, as promised, 6 minutes early or 5 minutes early that we are stopping off.
Thank you, Prabhu.
No, thank you. I'll see you all next week, because this was a filler class. Next week, I think we have class, correct. And the week after is July 4th, so we won't. All right. Thank you so much.